Hello again, everyone. It is Wednesday, the 10th of December. It's actually Wednesday, the 10th, and time for another edition with Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Brian Walton, and this is my partner, Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Brian. It's a pleasure to be with you today, tonight, this evening, whenever it is.
Well, we're actually coming to you on Wednesday afternoon, and we made a decision to wait to record this after the Rule 5 draft, which occurred at 1 o'clock Central Time on Wednesday afternoon. And I feel badly about that because I just made a big promise last week about how I was going to get it up at 6 a.m., the podcast it is, at each week. And so we're going to be late, but hopefully this will be worthwhile for you. Now, before we get into the Rule 5 draft, there's a couple of other news items that are worth covering. I should mention, by the way, that we come to you each week in video form at the Cardinal Nation, at YouTube, and as well Spotify. And then on several other podcast services, including Amazon and Apple and iHeartRadio, we're available in audio form. So you should be able to find us wherever you look. And obviously, you know that because you're already here, but I feel like I need to say it. So let's get into the news. The Cardinals claimed a right-hander named Zak Kent off waivers from the Cleveland Guardians this last week. The Cardinals were at 38 players on their 40-man roster, and this signaled that they liked Zak Kent as well as their second choice that they probably would have gotten in the Rule 5 draft, because basically by taking Zak Kent, that meant they had one less roster spot that they could use on Wednesday. What did you think of Zak Kent? 27-year-old, was up and down a lot, sort of was the Roddery Munoz of Cleveland, it looked like last year, albeit with better results.
Yeah, I was going to say, before the Roddery Munoz of it came in, Brian, that really, it's a cutter-driven profile. It's a really interesting cutter. It's got about an inch of break. It's fascinating, but I like this. Brian, I maintain that I like keeping as many arms and having as many arm options as possible, especially when they have interesting release characteristics, a jumpy fastball, and those are all things that Zack Kent has.
But
His name,
his fastball's like 92 or 93, right? I mean, it's hard to get excited about that.
you're right about that, but that's where the movement profile and the jumpiness kind of become really important, along with the approach angle. And it's nothing like super fancy. He doesn't get incredible extension, but it's enough to help that 92-mile-an-hour fastball play. I know that he's pitched in a starter role in the Guardians organization over the years, carved out a little bit of a relief role for himself last year in that Roddery Munoz role. So I think that he also offers the Cardinals some versatility with maybe some competition early on in camp to see where it goes from there. So I like it. I don't think if you have open spots, use them on interesting arms, and this is at least an interesting arm.
Now, you mentioned movement. Obviously, that's one of his big deals, but movement also translated into 5 walks per 9 innings at AAA.
Yeah. Well, that's the battle, right? Brian, we've been doing all these write-ups and talking about all these prospects as we go over our top 50 prospects in the Cardinals organization. And it's always one of two things, if not both things. It's either they need to work on their command or they need to find a third offering, almost always with the prospects. That's just the difference between a major leaguer and a prospect and trying to sort it all out. And I think that I don't know how much success the Cardinals will have getting to command. You just never really know. But I do feel confident, or at least encouraged, by the progress the organization has made in identifying pitchers that they can get the most out of, whether it be from a command standpoint or an arsenal standpoint. So I have faith that under Mr. Pierpont and Mr. Blake, that we will see them get the most out of this player. And if they didn't think they were going to get the most out of him, then they wouldn't have played him off waivers. That's my thought.
And AGM Rob Cerfolio and Farm Director Larry Day came from Cleveland, so they obviously knew Zak Kent very well, and I'm sure they weighed in on whether he was worth a 40-man roster spot.
Yeah.
There's one other trend that I see here that when we get to the Rule 5 discussion in a little bit, and that is that they're older prospects. Kent's 27. I think the two guys they picked up in Rule 5 are 26 and 28. So, we're not talking about youngsters right out of college. These are guys that are, at the highest level or higher level of the minors, and are in a position perhaps to be able to contribute sooner rather than later, which obviously is something the Cardinals want to see.
Yeah, and I think you hit on age, Brian. I think it also tells you a couple things about the Rule 5 and about the arms that are available and aren't available. Usually it's older arms that you have the opportunity to draft in the Rule 5 or claim off of waivers. They're usually a little bit older in this circumstance. I would suggest as we get into that a little bit later that part of the reason why one of the Cardinals prospects were drafted in the Rule 5 was because he was a little bit older and maybe not pitched above double A, but the age really plays. I think to emphasize the point that you're making, age just really plays a huge role into how 40-man rosters are constructed and the opportunities that are created within baseball and rosters for those players.
Fair enough. All right, another piece of news that happened, way back yesterday, I guess it was, that the lottery was held for the 2026 MLB draft, the first year player draft. And the Cardinals were one of the teams that had a chance for the first pick. Their odds of getting it were only 2.3%. They didn't get the first pick. The White Sox, who had the highest odds of receiving it, got it. But then things kind of went crazy, and some teams that had low odds ended up jumping into that top 6. And that pushed the Cardinals out. In fact, the Cardinals fell all the way to 13th, which is a major disappointment. Number one, in terms of the quality of player that they'll get at number 13, but also the money that they get to sign him. How did you feel about the lottery results?
Well, obviously, anytime that you fall back in the draft, it's sad. It's a bummer. I feel for them, and then you nailed it, Brian. For me, it's always about the money. I think about the bonus pool. I feel confident and fortunate that this group, led by Serfolio and Mr. Flores, the scouting group, the development group, the front office, I think they're kind of hitting on all cylinders. And I'm not as worried about the player they're going to pick 13th overall. I think that they will get a good player 13th overall. Last night on Twitter, I screenshot from Baseball Reference, like the past 20-ish, 25-ish, I don't even remember where it was, 13th overall picks. And there are some legit potential Hall of Famers on that list. Even some of the players that never made a major league debut were interesting prospects.
Yep.
So I only emphasize that to say drafting 13th it's not a death sentence.
No, not by any means. And like you said, they should get a good player. I think the other thing that folks shouldn't forget is that this competitive pick, balance pick that they get, which is going to be in the 32-33 range, overall gives them 13th, 33rd, probably 51st and 89, something like that. And so the Cardinals are going to get 4 picks in the first 90, which is great, especially compared to the fact that in 2022 and 2023, they lost their second round draft pick both years. So 2024 was the first time, in the last 3 years that the Cardinals actually had a full complement of day one draft picks. And that's a big deal to lose those picks.
Yeah. It would have been nice to have picked 8th or 1st or any place above 13th for sure. But that 30 would end up being the mid 30s to potentially 40 range comp A round. It softens some of the blow of falling back into the draft. So in the first round, it is a bummer. I feel for the scouts. I'm sure that they would like to have drafted that higher, better, money, more money, the better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the players are going to be available there for the Cardinals to still make a difference, to get a true impact bat or arm. And another trend is there was Adam Akbani and our friend Adam. Another gentleman, were having a conversation on Twitter last night about some of the players that might be available in that spot and how much it would have cost. And I think that the cost of it is really interesting because you find that over the last couple of years in that range, that 13 range, you almost always get a premier prospect talent and you save a little bit of cash just based on how the draft goes. It's not about drafting somebody underslot to draft them underslot. It's just that's usually how the draft works.
Hey, Liam Doyle signed for underslot.
That's exactly. So they'll have a little bit of money to work with further down the line. So I guess I'm rambling to say it'll all pan out. It'll all balance out. These things always balance out.
And I promise you that in the, 7 months between now and the July 11th draft, we will discuss this subject in significantly more detail. But do remember, the draft has moved up. It's going to be on the Saturday and Sunday of the All-Star weekend. So it's going to be earlier than before. But it's still, not going to be till mid-July-ish. So we got a lot of time to look forward to the 2026 draft. All right. So the main topic today, the Rule 5 draft. Kyle, are we going to have a glass half full discussion first, or a glass half empty discussion first?
Brian, my good friend Brian. How about this? Let's have a glass half full conversation first.
All right. The Cardinals selected they were 11th in terms of their win-loss record, but several teams above them either passed or had a full 40-man roster. And if you don't have a full 40-man roster, you can't participate in the major league phase of the World Rule 5 draft. We're going to talk about the major league phase first. And that is the one where if you pick a player, you have to put him on your 40-man, you have to keep him there all year, you have to send him back. Okay, so Cardinals picked 7th. They picked Matthew Pushard, a right-handed pitcher from the Miami Marlins system. He's a guy that, is more of a late bloomer, but successful at AAA. Certainly, has a fastball, I think, in the mid to upper 90s, and has a full range of pitches, but has not yet appeared in the majors.
Yeah, Brian.
What's your take on him?
So I love it. I love it. I love that they took I love that they took the chance to do this. I think that drafting him with that spot was the right direction to go. He's a hog molly of a human being, 6'7", 6'8". He's bulky. We're pro bulk here at Wednesdays with Walton and Reis podcast, so we're always gonna root for that. But the fastball is. We've spent a lot of time talking about the direction the Cardinals organization have gone to identify premier fastballs, whether it be in the draft or in other organizations. And Pushard, although I like to call him Pushard because it kind of sounds French and fancy, and I'm a fancy gentleman.
I'm pretty sure Pushard likes Grey Poupon.
Poupon. I love that fastball. His fastball, it gets swing and miss. It gets chase. And we know that he can do it with the major league fastball because he's doing it at AAA with a great swing and miss, a great chase rate. That is a great foundation to build on. And what we talked about a second ago about walk rate, like 9% walk rate, that's manageable out of a reliever. It's not fantastic, but it's not 12%. It's not Chris Roycroft. It's not Roddery Munoz. Like it's actually pretty impressive, the command that he's been able to get of his body and his mechanics, which of course there's nothing about, like you nailed it, a mid 90s. He can get up to the 97, but mostly lives in the 96 range. Fastball livelier than Andre Granillo with a breaking pitch that maybe isn't on Granillo's slider level, but is with his slider, with Pushard's slider. It's still a really good pitch, and he has a curveball to pair with it that is actionable. It's something that he can use, which again, somebody like Andre Granillo doesn't really have a third offering.
And that really sets him apart as a reliever, that he has 3 pitches that he can throw strikes. The question that it begs for me is, why in the heck didn't Miami have room for this guy?
It's all about age, Brian, which goes back to the question that you just put up. It all comes down to age. I think that I think teams a lot of times get kind of roped into the age of players. And I think that it hurts them when it comes to evaluating. I think a lot of teams would see a 27, 28-year-old reliever who has never made the major leagues and who has had mixed success in the minor leagues. And I think that they think, well, this is not a player that we think is worth the roster spot. It's just that simple. And that's how you swing in and get a guy like that. And like, it hurts teams and it benefits teams all in like the Ouroboros. It's all in like one. It's a cyclical in a way. And yep. I think that really plays into it more than anything. If he's a starter, more than likely they protect him. If he's 4 years younger, they protect him. Mm-hmm. But then, with someone like him, other teams have had the opportunity to draft him in past years. I'm assuming, I'm saying this, but I don't think this is the first time he was available in the Rule 5.
I don't know, but I would guess not. And, it's interesting because he caught Baseball America's attention, but they primarily did it, based on analyzing his results. There wasn't, scouting buzz about the guy, but yet obviously there must have been because the Cardinals picked him up fairly early.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seemed like as some of the smarter minds started digging into the Rule 5, he was definitely one of the names that were at the top of the list. And in some ways, Brian, I think that I was surprised to see that he hadn't gotten selected prior to the Cardinals selection And
the good news is, because he's never been on the 40-man before, he's going to have 3 option years. So, even if he doesn't make St. Louis initially, they can keep him around and see how he does at Memphis and, have a guy ready to ride the shuttle that we know that they love to do so well, with relievers during the course of the year. The other thing that interestingly happened in the major league phase is that 12 of the 13 players selected were pitchers, right-handed pitchers. Only one position player, catcher, was taken. And, for all those who were worried about Blaze Jordan and, the other hitters that were available, I went back and looked at the history. And since 2002, which is the first time I started to track this, in that time, the Cardinals have lost exactly one hitter in the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft in 24 years. So, as much as we worry about, yeah, and sure, if Leonardo Bernal would have been made available, somebody would have picked him up. But the Cardinals obviously weren't that stupid. But the point is, these guys that are kind of on the cusp, on the edge, they just don't get taken. Now, on the hitter side, on the pitching side, I was scared a little bit when I heard Hansel Rincon called out later in the first round. But of course, it was the Hansel with an S, who was in the Brewers organization way down in the Dominican Summer League, not the Hansel Rincon and the Cardinals, who probably was put on the AAA roster and would have been available to be selected, but isn't ready for the major leagues coming off an injury.
Yeah, and Brian, we finally found out that Hansel Rincon, it was a hip injury with him. That
Oh.
so that's just a little bit of information. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, what I think a couple different outlets have discovered about the Rule 5 in the modern era, the last 4 or 5 years since the COVID era, we'll call it, the post-COVID era, is that it's almost specifically right-handed relievers, right-handed pitchers, we'll say, just almost always right-handed pitchers, almost always a little bit older, and almost always with some type of injury in their past that has kind of delayed their development, which brings us into the minor league section.
Way to set up, and you're so sneaky, Kyle. See what Kyle did there? The
That was
Cardinals
brought,
in the first round of the minor league phase, and again, the minor league phase are there's this work that goes on behind the scenes. The 40-man roster is what it is. We see it. Then they create special rosters just for Rule 5, and they have up to 38 players that they can put on the AAA roster for Rule 5. So the team doesn't just take the entire Memphis roster and say, okay, it's my Rule 5 roster. They're going to take guys from AA that they want to hold on to or make it more painful to leave. Then they're going to take some guys that were on the Memphis roster and move them down so that it's not, and they're guys that they don't care as much about losing. And this minor league phase of the AAA phase is what they call it, really. The AAA phase of the Rule 5 draft, players only cost like $24,000 to take, and they don't have to be returned. And they don't have to be put at any particular level. The new team can do with them whatever they want to do. So this is kind of the guys who are sort of at the next level. Very rarely do these guys become major leaguers, but John Brebbia is a name who's had a long career as a left-hander, still around, is a guy the Cardinals got in the minor league phase of Rule 5 draft. So it does once in a while happen, but more often these are role guys who are filling in jobs in the minor leagues. And that was a long-winded introduction to say Ryan Murphy, the player the Cardinals picked from the Giants organization, who was at AA last year, was coming off 2024 Tommy John surgery. So he didn't throw a lot of innings this last year.
no, and there's I think he's had different injuries kind of plague him throughout his minor league and collegiate career. Although, well, his minor league and pre-draft career. It's funny, like he's kind of a lot like Zack Kent in some ways. His mechanics are somewhat similar. He's built similar to Zack Kent. It's a fastball driven profile. Although it's not, low 90s before surgery. He has some interesting secondaries, a slider in the mid 80s, curve in the low 80s, high 70s. It's an arsenal that's still developing as he works his way back from surgery. He was in the Arizona Fall League. Scouts got to keep an eye on him, and I'm sure that kind of played into the Cardinals' selection of him. But again, this is an arm that will give the Cardinals minor league pitching depth and in a starting capacity if they decide to go
And
that
by the
direction.
way, they're going to need another starter in the minor leagues at AA because the glass half empty part of the draft is a guy that you hinted about before was under consideration. Cade Winquest was taken by the evil empire New York Yankees in the first round of the major league phase. Number one, I won't ask you if you're surprised because obviously you're not surprised, but do you think Winquest can stick on the major league roster all year?
Yeah, 100%. I have no doubt about it. I have absolutely no doubt about it. Now, will it happen? You never know how a player is going to respond when they get in front, when the lights are bright and 40,000 people are surrounding them. And you never know, especially when you're getting ridiculed by the Yankee faithful. So you just never really know. But if you're asking me if
You
Cade
mean you mean cheered on? You mean
cheered on,
encouraged?
that's right. That's right. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of that.
Yeah.
What I do know, Brian, is that Cade Winquest absolutely has the stuff to excel out of a major league bullpen right now. It's a high 90s fastball that rides up in the zone. And, he doesn't always have to pitch up in the zone. He can use a whole zone, but the Yankees will use that fastball up in the zone. And from there, his curveball, which is a mid 80s offering and is tight and strong, and what I view as his best secondary offering, will play incredibly well. Again, if they're using him out of the bullpen, I haven't heard if he's just going to be a bullpen arm or a starting arm or what their plan is with him. I would assume a pen arm. But he has a curveball to go off of it. He's re-engineered his slider to make his slider a weapon. It's probably just average right now. And then he changed his changeup to a split finger, and he's had success with the split finger. And I'm 100% confident that the Yankees have identified that his split finger could be a weapon. So a pitch that he underutilized in the Cardinals organization because he could never really get the feel for it and messed around with it too much, and is just toying with, is a pitch now that they probably have identified it as a weapon. So if he's a reliever, he's going to be able to get by with a high 90s fastball that's touch 100 miles an hour and is lively, a curveball and a slider, and a split finger, which allows them to stretch him out if they decide they want to. So I don't know. I like, he's a really good arm that has only dealt with command issues in the past, but we saw him start throwing with more command midway through the 2025 season. So look, I'm as pro Winquest as a person can be, probably. When I started hearing that the team that took him was thinking about taking him over the weekend, it was a blow, Brian. It hurt. But I'm happy for him, just like I am for Pushard, all the 13 arms that were taken in the major league section, because that changes their whole outlook. That changes the amount of money they get. I don't know. I just think what we'll end up looking at with Cade Winquest, Brian, as I finish my rant, we'll look at that the Cardinals 40 man in the decision they made a month back when they protected players from the Rule 5, and I think we'll end up having to have a conversation in a year and then in 2 years or 3 years, however it looks, about some of the bats that were kept on the 40 man. No disrespect to Matt Koperniak, who I love, and I'm not going to talk trash on, or Jose Fermin, or some of those other guys that hung on, or adding Brian Torres over Cade Winquest. But just, you need as many arms as you're going to get, and it's dangerous to play games with elite talented arms, or arms that flash elite talent in this realm. So that's all I've got.
There you have it. So let me put you on the spot. Now, I will tell folks, you're not going to see Cade Winquest in our top 50 anymore because he's not a Cardinal anymore. However, he was going to be a top 20 guy, right on the edge of top 20, but top 20 prospect in the system. Do you think the Cardinals traded up to get Matt Pushard, or did they net lose today?
To me, okay.
I know it's not a fair question, and I know how I'm going to answer it, but I'm curious how you're going to answer it.
To me, it is a net loss. It is. It's just, I think about for the long haul with the St. Louis Cardinals. Pushard is not going to be a starter, and
Nope.
Winquest probably would never be a starter. Maybe not. I was always the guy who said Ryan Helsley should have started from day one, and I feel that way about Cade Winquest. I think that he should have been given a chance.
He did start in the minors.
That's exactly from day one as a major leaguer.
Yeah.
And Winquest has that kind of stuff, that elite, that high velocity, flashing plus fastball.
And it's not out of the realm of possibility that he pitches out of the bullpen the first year and continues to build his run from. Maybe even goes back down to AAA the second year. I mean, if you remember, Carlos Martinez came up. He was a reliever the first year.
Exactly.
In that case, it was because there was no place for him in the rotation. But it's not like guys haven't done that. I don't think Winquest's days of starting are necessarily over, even if the Yankees use him as a reliever. But I think it's a fair point to say, and granted, we know Winquest, this much more than we know about Matt Pushard, but it looks like the Cardinals lost in the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft day, probably.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's a bummer, and we'll keep a close eye on Cade. It'll be fun to watch him from afar.
Absolutely, you got to pull for it. The guy's going to realize his major league dream, and that's huge. That's huge. All right, so minor league phase, they got Ryan Murphy from the Giants, AA. Talked about him. They also lost 3 players. 2 of them were off the roster of the Texas League Championship Springfield Cardinals. Matt Lloyd, the first baseman, was listed on the Springfield roster, but he actually spent the year at Memphis. And Lloyd was a good organizational soldier, versatile defensively, drove in runs, a great dependable guy, a good depth guy to have. And he went to the Red Sox. Maybe they're going to use him and how they would have used Blaze Jordan, don't know. Um, but they also lost Sean Harvey and Zane Mills. How do you feel about those losses? These are in the minor league phase, so they're not going to come back.
Yeah, Hurney ended up filling some important innings, and Zane Mills has been a good organizational soldier there. He's also gotten more velocity than I thought he would when the Cardinals drafted him out of, I believe, Washington. Now I'm thinking Washington State, but it was the University of Washington. Um, I think that Zane Mills' exit from the organization also signals like it's a perfect timing for someone like Zane Mills to find his way out of a Cardinals organization because he doesn't have a fastball. It's been mostly sinker. It's all about keeping the ball on the ground, inducing contact. But it makes sense that both of the pitchers were taken by other organizations because they can fill a minor league depth role as both a starter or a reliever and at double A or triple A. So it makes sense that another couple organizations would take a chance on them. And, like you said, Mr. Lloyd was just kind of a power hitter that was a minor league journeyman. So good for him.
Yep. And Harney went to the Diamondbacks. Unfortunately, Mills went to the Cubs. So on one hand, you want to see Zane Mills, reach the major league someday. On the other hand, you'd rather not have him see him pitch against the Cardinals at Busch Stadium or at Wrigley for that matter.
Or maybe you do want to see it, depending on how it goes.
Yeah, maybe you do. Maybe you do. Certainly, if you can get the starter out of the game, that's a positive.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts? There were 55 players that changed. There were 13 in the major league phase. I mentioned 55 players that changed teams in the minor league phase. The Cardinals lost 3, which is more than their fair share. Their average would have been about 2. So, as much as some folks are not positive about the Cardinals system, I mean, they had more guys taken than the average team in the Rule 5 draft today. More guys lost. And you don't ever want to lose players, but on the other hand, it's a nice thing that somebody liked their guys too and are willing to give them a chance.
Yeah. It seemed like a quiet 55 players, but it still seemed kind of like a quiet Rule 5, all things considered. I just look. I think the thing that I would like to emphasize again is we root for the players even when they find their way out of the organization. Zane Mills and the Cubs aside, we're not going to get into that. We would never. But it's an exciting time for these players. There's turmoil, but it's an exciting moment not only for the guys who are exchanging organizations via the major league side of the Rule 5, but the minor league side of the Rule 5. And to Cade Winquest and Matt Pushard, I hope that they can stay with the major league club all year and earn a paycheck and not have to worry about getting sent back to the organization. And I hope that they just have success. And that's really my only thought. And just remember, arms are the ultimate revenue. They're the ultimate cash crop, basically, in sports. That's what in baseball. And it's hard to lose a really talented arm that had some really great value, but it's nice to get one in return.
And you're on record now. If you want to come back and second guess it down in a year or two and say, why did they keep these guys on the 40-man versus protecting him? It's a fair question and it's a good one. The Cardinals should not be letting good arms get away. And based on your level of confidence, we probably won't see Winquest back, but there is still a chance that if he doesn't fit in the Yankees picture, that he could be returned to the Cardinals at some point.
Yeah, it's not out of even if he ends up being a successful major leaguer with the Cardinals in return, there's just no guarantee. You just never know how a player is going to respond once they get to the major leagues.
That's right. So at the Cardinal Nation, I have something that I've maintained I always used to keep, and I do still keep spreadsheets. That's how I know what's happened in the Rule 5 draft for the last 25 years. But I used to keep spreadsheets of all the rosters, and I would track all the transactions and which guys are where, because it's a little wonky on MILB to look at everything in one place. Well, I realized that, hey, this is something I should share with others. So I created this thing called the roster matrix. And it's just a very simple spreadsheet of which players at which position, at which level, which guys are on the 40-man, which guys aren't. And it's something I keep updated all the time. It's free. So make sure you check it out if you want to see where these guys are. Now, for example, I designate which guys are on the 40-man, but Matt Pushard has never pitched in the major league. So I didn't put him on the major league roster, even though he's going to be required to be there. But I haven't moved him there yet because he hasn't earned that promotion yet. So you'll see, and Murphy will be at Double A because that's where he ended up. Even if I project him on a Triple A, the roster matrix represents more of a current state than a projected future state. It's where it is now, and every transaction is detailed. So make sure you check that out. Also, our top 50, we're cranking down now, almost halfway through. And next week, we'll probably have some time again to catch up on some of the players that we've included in the rankings since the last time we talked about this. But you'll find one in-depth scouting report by Kyle every day for a different player, and then I'll add some of the stuff around the edges about where they started and where we think they're going to go. And I think they've come together exceptionally well. I know we're getting good feedback on them. You need to join the Cardinal Nation. You need to subscribe to read them all. About every fifth one, just to tempt you, tease you a little bit. We'll let you see, what we're thinking, what we're writing. But we put a lot of time and thought into this, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And hope you enjoy reading them as well.
Yeah, it's been an honor to be a part of, Brian.
I'm sorry?
I said it's an honor to be a part of. I love it. And by the way, the roster matrix, that thing is man, the amount of time that I've spent on the roster matrix over just such good work.
And it's I keep all the history as well, so you can go back 10 years and see, what the roster was coming out of spring training, or what the roster was at the end of the season, or what the transactions were during July of 2023. It's all there. So, make sure you use it. A lot of times, what's there, the rosters disappear. When the rosters change, that view's gone forever. Not the case with the roster matrix. There's times in year, beginning of the season, beginning of the off season, spring training, where I freeze it in time and then I start over again with new transactions. So again, spending a lot of time selling something that's free, but it's something that's there for you to use. So why not?
Yeah. I love that we're doing it, honestly.
All right. So welcome. Thank you for staying for the late version of the December 10 version of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. We will see about the 17th being back on our regular schedule, but it's going to depend on how the news goes. And hopefully will be some trade news and some new prospects coming into the system before too long. Looks like winter meetings. Probably the Cardinals aren't going to make the big splash move because people are getting on planes and heading home now, but they've probably laid the groundwork for some discussions that are going to bear fruit in the upcoming days and weeks.
That's it. Look, we're going to get news one way or the other, and it's going to come, and it's probably going to come not fast, but furious, we'll say.
Yeah, and probably at the least opportune time for those of us who try to keep on top of the news. But hey, that's what makes it all fun. And by the way, congratulations to Jack Buck, who's going to join the broadcasters wing of the Hall of Fame. And congratulations to Katie Wu, who took a new assignment to cover the Dodgers for The Athletic. She did a real nice job, very professional, and very good to work with as well in her time in St. Louis. And I predict we're going to see her on the national stage before too many years.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start the clock there. That clock it'll run out very soon because she's incredible, world-class human being, world-class reporter.
Well, there you have it. And that's all for December 10th. And again, we'll talk to you on the 17th. Thanks for watching and listening, everyone, to Wednesday with Walton and Reis. That's a wrap for this time around.